We are finally getting started. I'm a couple minutes late, but that's okay. It's okay to be a couple minutes late. It's okay. So, let's worry about what's going on today. Oh, I'm tired already. I'm too tired. I don't care. I'm too tired. Anyway, let's get started. Because if I don't get started now, it's probably going to rain. First of all, I want to start by apologizing to people who keep asking me if I can push the live stream to later in the day. I've tried. I have tried. Literally, I've tried. It's very difficult for me to do that because, frankly, I am very busy on Fridays, so I'm just not really able to push it back. So because I can't push it back, this is the time. It's okay if you have to watch it on replay. It's not really that big a deal. Anyway, let's get actually started instead of me just apologizing for, again, not pushing it back. I'm going to say that every week, unless and until my schedule changes and I'm able to actually push it back. I right now can't. Also, there's ducks over this way. Anyway, welcome back to Andersen Acres. It is the third Friday of the month. That means it's time for another animal spotlight. This week, I want to talk about chickens, but not just any chickens. I want to talk about the divas of the chicken world. The fluff balls with attitude. The one and only Silkie chicken. So there is a couple of Silkies in the pen behind me. They're not locked in the pen. They can either jump over the board that way or they can go through the barn and come up the other side. But we raise Silkies. We breed Silkies. We have a lot of fun with Silkies. They are literally our favorite breed around here. We like other breeds. We have other breeds. But Silkies are where it's at. So we are going to do some Q&As about Silkies. I've gotten a lot of questions. As soon as people realized I was going to be talking about Silkies, they gave me a lot of questions answered. So we will get to those eventually. But first, we are going to start talking about chickens in general and Silkies in particular. So let's start with chickens in general. If you're new to hobby farming, chickens are the gateway animal, really. They're the first thing all of us get. We go and we get some chickens, and we go, we're just going to get chickens. And then 2 years down the line, you're like, I don't know why I have all these goats and sheep, but it started with chickens. Chickens are to blame. It's always chickens. I'll tell you, it's always chickens. You start with a few hens for eggs, and then you look around, you got a cow. What can I say? Okay. The next thing that happens after you get yourself a few chickens is you start Googling things like, can chickens ride in car seats because you can't trust your pet sitter? Guilty. I don't go on vacation. But chickens themselves are amazing creatures. They're relatively easy to care for. They are fun to watch, and they give you breakfast. What other animal on your farm poops out breakfast? None of them. Just Silkies. Not just Silkies. Chickens, but we're talking a lot about Silkies today. So it's a pretty solid deal when it comes to chickens because they're the total package. They even lay you breakfast in a little packet, little eggshell. Isn't that handy? That's fantastic. So chicken needs are also really easy to meet. Like, it's easy to raise chickens. It's easy to have chickens because... Thank you, Lonesome. It's Lonesome over there. They crow. But it's easy to have because they don't require a lot. That's right. So they need a secure coop of some kind. They need somewhere to live. They need to be safe because everything wants to eat a chicken. Whatever the predators are in your area, they want to eat a chicken. So you have to come up with a way to keep them safe. Now, obviously, ours are not locked up, and the reason ours stay safe is because we have livestock guardian dogs, but you might do it with secure fencing, excellent coops, things like that. As long as they're safe, it doesn't matter. As long as they're safe. Whatever way you have to keep your birds safe, that's fine. They need good quality food, which comes from your local livestock store. And they need clean water, which comes out of the tap. You don't need fancy water. I know some people are like, well, I give my chickens filtered water. You generally don't have to do that. If your tap water is safe for you to drink and shower, it's probably safe for your chickens. Just give them tap water. They're fine. You'll need bedding of some kind in most cases. You'll be replacing it more often than you'd like, and sometimes bedding is more expensive than the food. But if you're careful with your bedding and you think hard about how long things are going to last, and you opt for things like sand in areas that you can use sand, which doesn't need to be replaced as often, you can actually stretch things out a fair bit. So they need their bedding, and they need a spot to dust bathe. Yes, chickens take dirt baths, and they look way too pleased about it while they're doing it, but a dust bath is important to their health. So if you have free-range chickens like we do, they will dust bathe wherever they want. They've kind of cleared a patch here where they like to dust bathe because they can. But if you keep them in a coop, you can provide them an old tire filled with a mix of sand and dirt and stuff, and they can dust bathe themselves. Or they'll make their own dust bath even if you have them in a coop. They're just, they're chickens. They'll do their thing. So they're relatively easy to look after. So adding chickens to your homestead is easy. Okay, they are the easiest animal. You might not decide to keep chickens long term if you really decide you don't like having chickens, but generally they're the first thing everyone starts with. So today we are talking specifically about Silkies, though. There goes a Silkie right now. That's Spark. He's a wonderful bird. A couple more off camera. There's actually a couple over this way, and there's ducks. So we have lots of Silkies. We have quite a few Silkies. We have about 30. You don't see them all because they like to hang out in the bush. But yeah, we have about 30. And they are definitely our favorite bird. We like having Silkies. But I know they don't look like real chickens. I know that. They look like someone tried to breed a chicken with a puffball and then plugged it in like a chia pet. I'm not sure how to describe a Silkie. They look like you accidentally bred a puffball with a chicken and then electrified it. That's what they look like. There's also mosquitoes literally everywhere. I hate mosquitoes. Get off me. Anyway. So they have really fluffy feathers. They have black skin. A lot of them have blue earlobes, and they have 5 toes instead of 4. 4 is the standard among chickens. Silkies have 5. And sometimes they have 6, but 5 is the standard. So sometimes you'll get an extra toe on top of the extra toe, and that's kind of weird, but it happens. It's a disqualifier if you're in chickens, but it happens. Basically, they're the overachievers and the underachievers of the chicken world all rolled into one. Okay? And they are really soft, like weirdly soft. Feathers shouldn't be that soft, but they're soft puffballs. So it's really interesting. It's like, how is this a bird and not a cloud? It's interesting. So the reason they're soft like that is their feathers are not barbed. So the reason most chicken feathers or most bird feathers look like a feather is they're barbed. Okay, so each hair on the feather is hooked to the next because they have barbs. So they stay hooked onto each other. So they form a nice smooth feather. Silkies don't have that. They lack those barbs on most of their feathers. So they look like you put them through the dryer. Don't put your Silkies in a dryer, but it looks like you did. Okay, so that's why their feathers don't lay flat. Why? Well, they kind of look like they went to the hairdresser and it didn't go well. But it also means they can't fly. Okay, some breeds of chicken can fly because their wings are big enough and stuff like that. Silkies can't pull it off, not just because their wings are little, but because their wings don't have real flight feathers, because their wings are full of feathers that are too poofy. Okay, even if they have 1 or 2 feathers that are nice and solid, they won't have enough. So Silkies can't fly well. Or let's be honest, they can't fly at all. They fall with style, but they don't fly. Now, temperament-wise, Silkies are sweethearts. Like, ridiculously sweet. They're proving me wrong, as they have a little fight back there. It's Jabba, who's not a Silkie, picking a fight with Spark, who is. Spark loses, because Spark doesn't know what to do. So That's what's going on back there. But yes, they are a sweet bird. Silkies are ridiculously sweet. They're calm, they're docile, to the point where a lot of times they get really bullied by the more assertive breeds. So you kind of have to watch if you're integrating them into a mixed flock to make sure they're not getting bullied, because they're also on the smaller side. They're a bantam breed. So because they're small and because they're kind of timid and because they're sweethearts, generally what ends up happening is they can get really bullied. So some people find that they're best in their own group, so they'll have a silky coop and they won't let them mix with other breeds or with really other gentle birds. Our flock, we've curated our flock to make sure we don't have anyone who's overly aggressive, so nobody beats up on the silkies, because the silkies are actually my son's birds and they are his pride and joy. Them and Shadowfax. So they really mean a lot to him. So we have carefully curated our birds to make sure that none of the silkies are ever going to be targeted, that they're not going to be that. Now, silkies are a little bit higher maintenance than a backyard hen. Okay, so think of them as chickens that need a spa day every now and then. Okay, they're fun. They're easy still, but they do require a couple extra things. So because of their fluff, they don't do great in mud or wet conditions. Okay, because they don't have that natural slicking that happens with normal feathers. You know how the water will kind of sheet off a lot of the birds? They don't have that because their feathers are not barbed. Their feathers are all... So the water penetrates really easy. So they turn into drowned rats at the drop of a hat. So you want to make sure they have a dry spot to stay. Not that I can stop the silkies from standing out on the septic field in the middle of a rainstorm and looking like drowned rats anyway. But at least they have the option. So make sure they have somewhere dry to be. And make sure their coop stays relatively clean, because they have such fluffy feet that their feet are going to get caked in mud and poop and other gross things. So try to keep their space where they are relatively clean, because you just want to make sure that they're not going to get like feet that are caked in goo, right? You don't want those feathered feet just caked in stuff. It's not attractive. So try to keep that under control. Also, they have like fluffy poofs on their head, these crests. These can sometimes block their vision, like flop, and make it difficult for them to see, which can make it difficult for them to get away from predators. So you want to make sure that you keep their eyes clear. So you might want to trim. Some people tie their hair up in a little top knot. We don't do that. We just trim back a little bit if we notice someone's having trouble seeing. Otherwise, we just live and let live. But you just want to make sure that they're not, you know, walking into fences like little feathered Roombas, because they're fine. They're good birds, but sometimes they can't see. So help them see. And then the thing about silkies that people either complain about endlessly or they're fine about. Okay? You've got two options here. The broodiness. They're broody as heck. And they are. Let's be fair. They're broody. So people either love the broody, the desire to hatch a baby, or they don't. Okay? Those are your options. They either really love it or they really hate it. So they like to have babies. They're like, oh yeah, you wanted me to lay eggs? Too bad, I'm nesting now. I'll be in my cave of fluff and fury. That is just what they do. So, But honestly, they make excellent moms. So if you're hatching chicks, they're gold. They're perfect to have on your farm. If, however, you don't want any broody chickens at all, you might want to skip the silky. The hens decide randomly that, yes, indeed, I think I'll make a baby. I don't have any eggs, but I'm going to do it anyway. Here's a rock. They're not the smartest. But let me tell you, silky antics are next level. They're hilarious. And we've had silkies that nested in flower pots. We've had silkies that hatched ducks randomly for no good reason other than to hatch ducks, and stole other hens' chicks. So we've had another hen that wasn't a silky hatch a bunch of chicks, and then a silky came in and just took all her kids away. I guess it's the It's the chicken version of CPS, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, that chicken stole everyone's babies. And we even had one chicken that mothered a litter of barn cats. She was determined, okay? She was determined to raise barn kittens, and she kept trying to take them from their mama. The downside there is she can't feed them. So we were having a little bit of an issue with a Silkie basically adopting the barn kittens. That was an issue. But it was okay. It was fine. It was fine. We handled it. Okay. We did. It was fine. Right now, we have got a Silkie who is sitting on a golf ball, and she's actually in the bush over there. And every time we take something away from her, she finds a new thing. That's why it's now a golf ball. But at this point, we're just don't care. It's like, whatever. Just sit on your golf ball and be happy. They're weird. Okay? She thinks she's royalty anyway, so that's what she's doing right now, is hatching a golf ball. It's never going to turn into a baby, but whatever. Okay? I'm not sure how many eggs she's laid this year. Probably only 2 or 3, because every time you turn around, she's broody again. So we're just gonna, that's just little one. We're just ignoring little one and letting her hatch her golf ball. It's fine. Don't worry about it. She's just here for the vibes. Okay? It's just, little one is all vibes. No thoughts, just vibes. So, before we get to our Q&A section, I do want to talk about a few chicken myth busters, okay? Because people don't always know what they're getting into with chickens, or they believe things that they shouldn't. Because sometimes you just heard something and it sounded right, and so you believed it. But there are a few things about chickens that you should know that are definitely not true. So, one of the things you often hear is chickens lay eggs every day. Some lay eggs almost every day. No chicken lays eggs 365 days a year. You will get things like leghorns that are your super layers that will lay eggs close to every day, but they're still going to skip a day here and there. It's just the way it happens. Some birds like Silkies, they really don't lay anywhere close to every day. They're ornamental, not production birds. You'll get eggs, but not a lot, and that's fine if that's what you are into. So we know we're not going to get a ton of eggs from our Silkies. That's why we hatch most of what we get and don't eat them. I use the occasional Silkie egg to like glaze my buns because they're smaller and there's less waste. But in general, what you're looking at is an egg every couple days. Sometimes they'll go egg every day for a little while, and then all of a sudden they're like, no. They're Silkies. Another myth that I hear a lot about chickens in general is that roosters are mean. Some are, but some are sweet. Silkie roosters are kind of goofy. Like, we've never had a mean Silkie rooster. I've only ever had one mean rooster, and he didn't hang around long. I'm not going to tell you. Not going to tell you what happened to him, but he didn't stay long. You don't keep mean roosters. Don't breed mean roosters. It's not worth it. But they're few and far between. Most roosters are quite sweet, or they're funny, or, there's a dozen things that roosters could be. And mean is not common. It happens sometimes, but it's certainly not common. Okay? Now, roosters like to act tough, but really, they're not any tougher than anyone else. So most roosters are fine, okay? Another myth is that chickens are dumb. I know I call them fluffy idiots all the time. I know that. But they're not really. They're okay, they're not a dog. Okay, they're not as smart as your dog. That's true. But they're not really that stupid. Chickens recognize faces. They can learn routines. They know who brings the treats. If you're late to the coop, they know. And really, just because they're not as smart as your dog, I mean, they're not a golden retriever, but that doesn't make them complete idiots either. So just know that they're not as stupid as you've been led to believe. Now, fun fact about Silkies, there was a time when Silkies were thought to be part rabbit. No joke, people actually believed that. People in Europe thought they were a cross. This is a long time ago, obviously. Silkies are a heritage breed. They've been around a while. But I just got bit by a mosquito. But yeah, they did believe they were a cross between a bird and a bunny. Clearly, nobody had access to Google in the 13th century. But that did used to be a thing. So silkies have been around a very long time. A lot of breeds have. I know sometimes there's a lot of modern chickens, a lot of modern breeds of chicken, but some chickens have been around for centuries, like the Silkie. They're a heritage breed, been around a long time. Thank you, Sauron. We're having a little party in front of me. Yeah, we're having a little party in front of me. Hi, ladies. Anyway, on to our Q&A portion. Because today's stream is going to be a little bit shorter because I am pressed for time. So I have a list of questions that people submitted, a lot of them about silkies. So I'm going to answer as many of those as I can before I get eaten alive by mosquitoes, because the mosquitoes are really bad here this year. They weren't as bad last year. This year they are just nasty. So hopefully the wind will pick up and blow most of them into the bush and I won't care. But right now, that's not what's happening. Anyway, questions. Thank you, Sauron. So one of the most common questions I get about silkies specifically is, what color eggs do they lay? Now, you're going to hear people give you all kinds of answers. The actual answer is the vast majority of silkies lay either a light cream or like a tinted, very light tinted beige. Nothing fancy, but they are cute. There are a couple of people who are working on getting silkies to lay blue eggs, but that takes outcrossing. So to get that, you have to take a silkie and cross it to something like an Araucana or something that lays a blue egg, and then breed that back and hopefully get rid of the non-silky traits but keep the blue egg. It's a very difficult project to achieve. A lot of people think silkies lay blue eggs because they have blue earlobes, but earlobe color has nothing to do with egg color. I know that's a big myth. Okay, it circulates all the time. Check the earlobe. If it's white, they lay white eggs. If it's brown, they lay. That's not true at all. It really is so breed specific what color the earlobe is, and it's not connected to the egg color. Okay, so silkies have blue earlobes, but they lay typically cream colored eggs. They're beautiful little eggs, but they are small. So they're smaller than your average egg. If your average egg is like that, okay, your average egg is yay, silkies are like yay. They're quite a bit smaller. So it's really easy to tell if you've got one silkie in your coop, easy to tell who laid the silkie egg, because it's a small egg. Are silkies good with kids? Yes. In my experience, yes. And we've had lots of experience with silkies. They are great with kids. They are gentle, they're small, and often they enjoy being held. Often they like being picked up and touched. So yeah, I would generally say they're fine with kids. They're a good bird to have if you do have kids. They're just great with kids. I like silkies. Can you keep silkies with regular chickens? Yes, you can. We do. I do want to urge a little bit of caution, just because bigger breeds could pick on them. So it's best to pay attention to how they're all acting together. Okay, pay attention to how they interact, because it's entirely possible that your bigger birds might pick on them. So just kind of pay attention. Next question. Are silkies good layers? No. You'll get like 2 to 4 eggs per week per silkie, so they're not great layers. If you're looking to feed your family, that might not be the way to go. But they're cute. They lay cute little eggs. But if they're not laying only every a few days, that didn't come out right. But if they're not laying you very few eggs, they are broody. It's a little ridiculous. So they're not great layers, but they're cute. Do silky roosters crow? Yes. The crowing you've heard during this live stream has been from my silky roos. Okay, except for one crow that was from Java, everything else has been a silky roo. They crow. They might sound a little silly. Some of them do excellent crows. But some of them sound that's silky. So some of them sound ridiculous, but some of them sound pretty good. So, but yes, they crow. They're still loud. Cold hardy. Okay, so we live where it gets to 40 below. So I am uniquely qualified to say, yes, they are cold hardy. However, I'm going to put a caveat on that. If they stay dry, being wet and cold is a really big problem for your fluffy breeds. So they're perfectly cold hardy. They will do wonderful in colder climes. They do. We get to minus 40 for weeks here at a time, and our silkies are fine. The silkies are never the ones we have a problem with. However, if they get wet, they're going to freeze. So keep water out of your coop, especially in the winter. You do not want your silkies getting wet in the winter. They're not great at being wet in the summer, but wet in the winter is a death sentence. So yes, they're cold hardy, but not if they get wet. Can you eat silkies? Technically, yes, they are a chicken. However, they're not typically raised for meat. Why? One, there's not a lot of meat on them. Pick up your standard silky hen. There's nothing to her. She's mostly fluff. So there's not a lot of meat on them. But also, they're black. Like their skin, they're black. Okay? And in some cultures, they do use them to make traditional soups because of the darkness of their skin and their meat and stuff, but not generally. Generally, most people they don't want to eat them. So they tend to be ornamental birds. They're show birds. Some people use them for laying eggs, though those got to be people that don't want very many eggs because, woof, they don't lay very many. I love silkies, but don't get them to lay eggs. You'll be sorely disappointed they don't lay that many. But yeah, they're not the greatest meat chicken. Even if you are willing to if you're willing to eat them, there's almost no meat on them. So maybe don't. What do I feed my chickens? I literally just go buy all flock from my feed store. Okay. I don't use a layer ration because we have a lot of roosters. Generally, I'm not that big, and they can eat whatever they darn well please anyway. So yeah, I'm not that picky about what I feed them. We feed them kitchen scraps and stuff as well, but generally, yeah. We don't feed them anything special. We're not fancy about it. Okay, we're just not fancy about it. Are silkies noisy? Nah, not as noisy as most chickens, but they are not silent. I've seen people get silkies because someone told them they're quiet. They're quieter than like your leghorns or your Rhode Island Reds, or they're quieter than my Easter eggers for sure. But they're not silent. They still, like, the noise you're hearing is from the silkies, so they're not silent. Don't get them because they're silent. I mean, they're quieter than most breeds, but they're not silent. Do they need baths? No. Generally, bathe the chicken. If you had a silkie that was like really grimy, like fell in a mud hole and you had to pry it out of the mud hole and you're like, then maybe. But generally, no, you don't give a chicken a bath unless you have no choice. Maybe you're dealing with mites or lice or something, so you have to give them a bath. But generally, as regular care, no, you don't need to give your chickens a bath. Can they live in colder climes? I actually answered that one already, but we'll answer it again, no problem. Yes, as long as they are out of the wind and they stay dry. Yeah, and they're not alone. Chickens are really good at snuggling. Like, they'll snuggle up to the horse in the winter. So as long as you don't have like one or two chickens by themselves, as long as you have a large enough group, yeah, they're fine in the winter. Just keep them dry, keep them out of the wind, and they're fine. What's the weirdest thing one of your silkies has done? Raised ducklings. That will forever annoy me. Mostly because I didn't know what was happening, where my eggs were. I'm like, why don't I have duck eggs? And then she came out of the bush with ducklings. That was, I don't know. She raised ducklings. Do they need, there's mosquitoes, by the way. If you're wondering what I'm doing, there's mosquitoes. Do they need perches like other chickens, the Silkies? Some perch, but some don't. Like mine hate perching. They have other chickens to show them how to perch. They have chickens that are not Silkies, but I don't have any Silkies right now that like to perch. I did at one point have a couple that like to perch, but they got old. But in most cases, a lot of Silkies simply do not want to roost. So you should provide them with roosting bars so they have the option, but expect them to mostly curl up in a puppy pile because they like to do that. A really low roost does encourage roosting because they don't like to go up too high. Remember, they can't fly. So getting up to a roost 3 feet off the floor is not going to work for them very much. So generally provide them roosting bars that are low enough that they can get to them if they want to roost. But they may not want to roost at all. And that's fine. Can they be indoor pets? Some people do it. I am not a fan of chickens inside. I tend to think of chickens as outdoor pets. I'm fine with them being pets. You want a pet chicken, get a pet chicken. But in general, I really think chickens are happier outside. I'm not saying you can't do it. Some people do. They do diapers and all on their chicken. But it's not for everyone. And generally, your chicken will be happier if they can at least spend some of their day outside. So I would encourage you to get your chicken outside, even if it's an indoor pet. Maybe give them a pen outside they can spend nice days in. I generally am not a fan of keeping a chicken in the house all of the time. Hi, ducks. The ducks are over here. Anyway, next. Are Silkies recognized by breed associations? Yep. I've competed with mine. Mine do pretty well. We have a guy who raises really beautiful Silkies, and you're generally going to lose to him if you compete against him. But generally, yeah, we do fine at shows. Silkies are recognized by most breed associations, the American Poultry Association, the APA. Thank you, Lonesome. But the APA does recognize Silkies in both bearded and non-bearded varieties. And they're fun to show. If you want to get into showing, Silkies are not a bad one. Know that Silkies are really common. Show quality Silkies are not as common. So if you want to get into showing, get the best possible Silkies you can afford and try to buy adults. You can't guarantee that a youngster is going to be a show quality. Even if the parents are show quality, the chicks may not be show quality. So if you do want to get into showing, get the best pair of adults you can afford. What colors do they come in? Lots of colors. There are so many. You can get your white, your blacks, your blue, your buff, your splash, your thank you. There's so many different colors. There are experimental colors like your red piles. There are chocolates. There are so many lovely colors, and there's new colors happening all the time as people work on the breed. So yeah, there's lots of colors. You can probably find a Silkie in the color you like. We have lots of different colors around here. We've got your buffs, we got lots. Just because we like the different colors. They're fun. Are Silkies good for beginners? Yeah. They're fine because they're friendly. They're easy to care for. As long as you are ready to deal with less eggs than other breeds. But they're generally an easy type of bird to raise because they're so gentle. So yeah, if you've never had chickens before, Silkies might be the way to go. Almost any breed of chicken. I mean, most breeds of chicken are easy to raise. So even if it's not Silkies, it might be something else. Generally, they're not difficult to raise. Do our chickens have names? Yes. I never want to have so many chickens that I can't name them all. So everybody disappeared except for Lonesome, who's directly behind me. I literally don't see anybody else. But yeah, everybody has a name. Everyone from Lucy to, yeah, I don't see anyone else right now. I hear someone in the bush, but I don't see anybody. I can't see them. I can see there are chickens. I can't see which ones. But we have different names from Little One to Lucy to Sauron to Radagast to Saruman. We have lots of different names for our chickens. Spark is over there. Yeah, we have lots of different names for lots. I don't have so many chickens that I can't name them. What predators do you worry about in your area? We have a lot. We have everything from your coyotes and your bobcats to the cougar. That doesn't happen very often, but it can. But we have bears. Yeah, we're in bear country. So we have bears, we have raccoons, we have weasels, we have skunks, we have hawks, we have eagles. If it can eat a chicken, we probably have it, except for your more tropical predators. Just because of where we're located, it's like a little of everything. So our biggest threat are the coyotes and the foxes, but pretty much everything is a problem. And what do we do about it? Well, silkies are especially vulnerable because they can't fly. So what we do is we have the livestock guardian dogs. We couldn't do without them because I don't want to lock everyone up. There's no shade on people who have to lock everyone up because otherwise your chickens get eaten. But I don't want to do that. So because I don't want to do that, we had to make a conscious decision to invest in livestock guardians. So that's what we did. There's mosquitoes. Wish the wind would kick up. Anyway, how do you keep your silkies safe? The livestock guardian dogs. Yeah. That's literally our answer to keeping them safe. Right now, both dogs are in the bush. In fact, I just saw Tequila slinking through the bush over there, which means there's no foxes in that bush. That's important. That's how we keep ours safe. You might keep yours safe with really good coops or really good fencing. You might have a different method than we do, but we use livestock guardian dogs. It keeps them safer. Do silkies get along with other animals on the farm? For the most part, yeah, they get along just fine. They're pretty chill. We've had them wander around with the ducks and the goats, the barn cats, the dogs. As long as the other animals are gentle, silkies usually mind their own business. They just mind their business with more floof than everyone else on the farm. But yeah, generally they're fine with everyone. How big do silkies get? They're bantam size, so they're pretty dang small. Usually around 2 pounds for my girls. My boys maybe 2.5, maybe 3 at most. They're little, okay? They're not very big. You pick a silkie up and you'll notice they're all floof and very little. So they're tiny, tiny things. So yeah, a couple of pounds. They're not very big. Do silkies lay through the winter? As much as any chicken does. They slow down just like any chicken. So, like many chickens, they slow down or stop in those colder months, especially if you don't have supplemental lighting. Winters are time to fluff, not work. So they just kind of wander around. They lay occasionally, like sorta. Can silkies be kept in tractors or mobile coops? Yes, just make sure they stay dry and they have good protection. They don't fly and aren't fast, so they are more vulnerable to your predators. So make sure their setup is secure, whatever you use. Do silky roosters fight each other? They can, sort of, but they're usually less aggressive than other roosters just by default. If raised together and with enough space and with enough hens, our silky roos coexist just fine. Sometimes you might need a timeout coop for someone who is being an idiot, but in general, we don't worry about it. Can you show silkies in poultry competitions? Yes, they're a very popular show breed. You'll see other silkies fluffed and buffed to perfection at poultry shows all over. So definitely, if you want to get into showing, silkies are one way to do it. Just know there's going to be a lot of competition. Silkies are a popular breed, so a lot of people get their first foray into chicken showing through the silkie because they're a common breed, so they're easy to get, even if you get not great ones. So yeah, definitely you can show them. Just know there's going to be a lot of competition. Thank you, Lonesome. Your job is to stand behind me and crow? I think so. I think that's his job. That's the job he applied for. That's the job he got. How old do silkies live to be? It varies. With good care, I would expect 7 to 9 years out of most silkies. That's what we tend to get. Some live longer. I think our oldest was 13. That was Mystique a few years ago. She was an old bird, and she finally passed. But yeah, between 7 and 9 years on average. But When I say average, that means just as many live longer as die younger. So do know that it's not uncommon in the chicken world to lose a 2-3-year-old chicken for no good reason. It happens. But in general, I would say 7 to 9 years for a good silkie. Are silkie eggs safe to eat? I get this question all the time because people are like, well, they're small and the birds they have black skin and they have, it's like, yeah, but the eggs are fine. I promise the eggs are fine. They might be small, but they're delicious. Same flavor, just a little cuter. Silkie eggs are perfectly fine for human consumption. How do you tell a male silkie from a female? It's tricky at a young age. Even people who have raised silkies for decades will get tripped up when they're young. Silkies mature really slowly. So even at 4 or 5 months, you might not be able to tell for sure. And with all that fluff, the usual comb and wattle cues are harder to spot. Behavior and crowing usually give it away first. Generally, the females don't crow and the males do. The saying with silkies is, wait, if it lays an egg, it's a hen. If it crows, it's a roo. It's true. There are some ways you can tell. So males get streamer feathers coming out of the back of their poof, of their head poof. And you might, on some silkies, notice that they have a lead tail feather if they're a rooster. And on the males, as they mature, their poof tends to be more swept back, where hens tend to have more of a puffball on their head. But again, that's not guaranteed. Okay, so silkies are one of the harder to sex breeds. Can silkies handle being free range? Yes, ours do, obviously, and ours free range quite successfully. However, they're not great at avoiding danger. Okay, they are not great at that. So if you free range your silkies, supervision and a secure yard or livestock guardian dogs are the key to making sure they make it through the day. They can't outrun anything. They can't fly. They are not fast. They are not that great at paying attention to their surroundings. So you definitely want to be aware that silkies that are free ranging are going to need either you supervising or your livestock guardian dog supervisor. They're going to need something because silkies are the ditzes of the chicken world. They're smart, but they're not. So they do tend to have some troubles when it comes to avoiding the predators. So that's why we have livestock guardian dogs to protect our silkies. Why are silkies black? Okay, so it's actually a genetic trait. Why is their skin black? Why are their beaks black? Why are their toes black? It's weird, right? Most chickens are not, but some breeds are. There are a handful of breeds that are. It's a genetic trait. It affects their skin, and I mean, we're talking about more than just silkies, because other breeds have it, but some breeds will have black meat. They get very, very dark, and they can have this kind of deep blue-black coloring. It's not harmful. It's just a quirk of the breed, and it is something that people breed for because they like that dark fibromelanistic look. So I like it. Like, I think it's awesome. But not everybody does. I do. Do you need to trim their nails or feathers? Not any more than you do any other chicken. So occasionally you'll have a chicken that just doesn't wear down their nails. You'll notice one chicken will have like a really long middle nail or something. You might have to trim it. But that can be true of any breed, not just silkies. For feathers, the only trimming I've ever done on a silkie is around the eyes to make sure they could see better. Otherwise, you generally don't have to trim the feathers. They're fine. Those are chickens. Those are not silkies. How often do you clean a silkie coop? About the same as any other coop, to be honest. If you tend to clean your regular chicken coop once a week, that's what you'll be doing with silkies. Maybe a little more in the muddy season, just because they tend to track mud in with their fluffy feet. But generally, keeping things dry and fluffy is the name of the game. So as long as you can do that, it doesn't really matter. However often you clean, as long as it looks good, smells good, and isn't full of muck, you're fine. Are there any special health issues with Silkies? Well, the fluff can hide some problems. For example, mites or injury. So you might want to check a little more often just to make sure that your Silkies aren't injured because they're these giant fluff balls. Sometimes you won't see an injury because there's so much fluff. So maybe check once in a while. Also, they are tend to broody behavior, which can lead to weight loss if not managed. So pay attention. Just see if your broody Silkies are getting thin. If they're getting thin, you might need to break them from being broody or just at least make sure they're eating. Can you tell chicks' genders at hatching? With Silkies? Good luck. Vent sexing, for one, it's not always accurate. Even people who've been vent sexing for years make mistakes. But Silkies are bantam breeds, and vent sexing bantams is actually really dangerous. Okay, it can really hurt the baby, and it can kill them even. So most people won't vent sex a bantam breed. It usually takes several weeks or even months to gender your Silkies for sure. So no, at hatch, you're not going to be able to tell the boys from the girls. Do you need to vaccinate Silkies? This is one of those. Okay, most of my Silkies are not vaccinated. I'm not anti-vaccine. But vaccines for chickens. So you don't need to vaccinate them any more than you would vaccinate a regular chicken on your farm. Here's the thing about vaccines. They tend to come in ridiculous quantities, like 1,000 doses. And for 1,000 doses, the price isn't bad. But I'm not vaccinating 1,000 chickens. And they have to be vaccinated at hatch for most things. So generally, you're going to find that it's not worth it financially to vaccinate your backyard flock. You're not hatching enough to buy 1,000 doses of a vaccine that once you open it, you have to use today. You can't store it. You can't. It's generally no. I'm not anti-vaccine, but I'm not going to spend that kind of money to vaccinate the chicks I hatch. It's not going to happen. So, could you vaccinate your chickens? Yes. You can vaccinate them at hatch. Most backyard people are not going to do that. That tends to be just the major hatcheries because they have so many hatching at a time that it's financially worth it to them. It's not worth it to your backyard keeper. Okay. Maybe one day if they sell the vaccines in smaller quantities, maybe. But like I said, I'm not anti-vax. It's just not going to buy a vial that is for 1,000 chickens and vaccinate 4. And you have to have that vaccinate rate at hatch. So I'd need a new vial every week. No, I'm not going to do it. It's just not financially viable. Hi, DK. DK's wandering around the bush. Are Silkie's feathers waterproof? No, not even close. Okay, Silkie's feathers are not waterproof. Chickens in general are not waterproof. Ducks are. Hi, ladies. That's my ducks. Making all that noise. Hi, DK. DK's coming out of the bush. Hi, bud. So, Silkies are less waterproof than your regular chickens. Okay? Their feathers do not repel water at all. They get soaked. They can get chills. So, dry coops and a covered place to go is a must for Silkies. Can you keep just one Silkie? I mean, there's no law against it. But chickens in general are social animals. A single Silkie is probably going to get lonely. Okay? It doesn't necessarily need another Silkie, but it needs another chicken. So get a friend. Okay? I recommend like 2 or 3 in groups just to keep each other company. Even if you only want one, it's not in the best interest of the bird. So get 2 or 3 just to keep each other company. Okay, do Silkies recognize their owners? Yep. Guaranteed Silkies recognize you, especially if you're the person who usually comes with the snacks. Yes. Okay. Our Silkies, especially with Tristan, will run up to him, perch on his lap, follow him around the yard. They're surprisingly personable once they bond with you. What is the best part about raising Silkies? Honestly, the fluff, the personality, And the pure chicken chaos. I like the chicken chaos. Silkies are little characters with a ton of heart. Also more mosquitoes. But silkies make every day on the farm just a little more magical. There's a reason they're my favorite breed. But I have to go. So that'll be about it for us here today at Andersen Acres. If you've got silkies or chicken stories of your own, I would love to hear them. So drop a comment below if you're watching this on the replay and let me know what your birds are up to. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today, and we will see you tomorrow. We will go out, taking a look, see if there's anyone over there. Anyone over there? No? See if I can see anyone. Oh, let's swivel around and look at the ducks. Let's look at the ducks. Can we see the ducks? There. Ducks. They were hanging out beside me pretty much the entire live stream. They're excellent ducks.